Matland, or Mannheim, is the title of a work that Olof Rudbeck developed between the late 1600s and 1702, when the project was abruptly cut short by the devastating fire of Uppsala, Sweden. Countless artifacts, purported giant skeletons, the university library, and most of Rudbeck's fourth book were destroyed. Many of these treasures came from old Uppsala, once the pagan world's capital, and their loss in the fire, combined with it being in the 1700s, raises an important question. Was this part of the reset? The Little Season? The theory itself is all the more intriguing. Rudbeck sought to harmonize all ancient sources to geographically prove that the mythical islands, including Atlantis, were not lost lands beneath the sea, but rather the still-standing Scandinavian peninsula, the true home of the ancient gods, kings, and peoples. At first glance, the idea may seem confusing. How could a sunken island be a living peninsula? What is striking is that in antiquity, Scandinavia was often described as an island by authors from Pliny and Ptolemy to Pomponius Mela and Jordanes. The very Greek word Nisos, or island, has clear Germanic and Indo-European etymological ties to peninsula, sharing cognates with nos. Rudbeck anticipated this modern insight, tracing Nisos back to the Swedish Nas, meaning headland, cape, or peninsula, a word also related to Nasa, meaning nose. Though modern scholarship does not officially link the Greek Nisos to the Sanskrit Nida, meaning a nest or a small resting place, the similarities are striking. The Proto-Indo-European root being Nisto. These, in turn, connect to Swedish words like nista, a small pack of food. And nystan, a ball of yarn. All share a common meaning, something connected either to itself in a bundle or to a larger whole, whether a hut, a peninsula, an island, or even a knotted ball of threads. This opens up the possibility that Thule, Ogygia, and Atlantis could etymologically mean peninsula. Such linguistic echoes across Indo-European languages reflect the ancient view of one coherent Japhetic race, descendants of Japheth, Noah's son. The story deepens. Japheth was often equated with Iapetus, the father of Atlas, the giant condemned to the outer darkness of Tartarus. If Tartarus is where Atlas lives, and if Atlantis is the land of Atlas, then Atlantis and Tartaria seem at least somewhat interchangeable. Roman historian Tacitus shows how Scandinavia marked the edge of the known world, writing in Germania 45. Across the Suiones, or the Swedes, is another sea, sluggish and almost motionless, which encircles and confines the world of lands. Similarly, Adam of Bremen placed the Riphaean Mountains in Finland as the known world's edge. On the east, Finland touches the Riphaean Mountains, where there is an immense wasteland, the deepest snows, and where hordes of human monsters prevent access to what lies beyond. Tartarus was synonymous with the underworld, a cold, dark wasteland beneath the living world. And remarkably, the Finnish-Swedish Bach saga names ancient Scandinavia Hell. Rudbeck identified this pattern independently 300 years earlier, interpreting hell in the Eddas as a literal ancient Scandinavian landscape. Even place names confirm this. The Gulf of Bothnia derives from botten, meaning bottom. To descend, one must go down. Down means ner in Swedish, and ner is the Proto-Indo-European root of the English word for north. To go north is to descend into hell, or heel, the bottom corner of the foot. Bach saga literally means goat saga. From hell came the goats, or the Goths, or the gods, the Scythians, a tradition preserved both in Gothicist thought and in modern studies like archipelagos, the interconnectedness of the Aryan peoples.
I can't count the number of instances in which a people referred to as Scythian by one ancient author are then referred to as Gothic, or as Germanic, or as some branch of the Germanic peoples by another author from a similar time period.
Even the region of Old Kimi, today Kemi-Lappmark in northern Scandinavia, could echo the ancient land of Kem in Egypt, meaning darkness, from which the Scythian Cimmerians may have drawn their name. Plutarch describes the Cimmerians as ancient Arctic dwellers in Marius 11.5. Most lived at the confines of the earth along the outer sea, which was shaded, wooded, and wholly sunless. Day and night divide the year into equal parts, of advantage to Homer in his Odyssey, consulting the shades of the dead. Could the black soil of Egypt, Kem, have originally symbolized the darkness of the Arctic North? Ancient authors sometimes even placed the Atlas Mountains not in Africa, but in an Arctic frozen Tartarus. Hesiod's Theogony describes Atlas in Tartarus holding up the sky. Virgil's Aeneid speaks of a snow-capped Atlas, battered by rain and frost. Caelius Italicus Punica similarly describes Atlas with beard with white eyes. The two major mountain ranges in the north are the Scandinavian mountains and the Ural mountains. Maximus of Tyre clarifies which one is Atlas's in his dissertation. The Hesperian Libyans inhabit a land narrow and long, and on all sides surrounded by sea. For the external sea, being divided about the summit of this neck, embraces the land with numerous and marine billows. To these men, Atlas is a temple and statue, but Atlas is a hollow mountain of great altitude, open to the sea like theaters to the air. Here we find yet another name for this place: Libya. You can already get a sense of how many names this famous land went by, which fits the Swedish saying, "Ett kärt barn har många namn." A loved child has many names. These Libyans later migrated to North Africa and called themselves barbarians or Berbers, a region that Plato later compared to Atlantis. Their homeland is described as a land with water on all sides, which is narrow and long, just like Scandinavia. Its Atlas Mountain stands against the sea, shaped like a theater that is round-shaped, like ancient theaters were. Scandinavia's mountains fit this description, while the Ural Mountains do not. Another way in which the distinction between island and peninsula was blurred in Scandinavia was through its vast archipelagos and inaccessibility to the Greeks and Romans. This led both Pliny and Pomponius Mela to report that the area was filled with islands, a description they took literally, resulting in Scandinavia being depicted as one of many islands, clearly seen on Mela's map. One should, of course, ask whether this might instead be evidence of a flood, a possibility Rudbeck rejected due to his belief that the Great Deluge had already occurred, his theory being strictly post-Diluvian. His explanation, however, remains powerful as it accounts for why the region generated so many island names, and why then later scholars were unable to easily connect these names to Scandinavia or any known geography. The accounts describe the archipelagos forming through mud, spilling from the land into the sea, muddying the waters and creating islands. This produced a landscape resembling a network of rivers and canals, precisely the features described by Plato in Atlantis, which he was unsure was entirely man-made due to its immense size of 10,000 stadia. It is also described by Mela in the Baltic region under the name Codanus, and by Plutarch in Ogygia. Finally, Rudbeck even tackled the famous problem of the 9,000 years before Solon. anticipating modern chronological revisionists like Anatoly Fomenko, Rudbeck drastically shortened ancient timelines. He suggested that ancient chroniclers often counted lunar months as years, and that the Egyptian dynasties overlapped rather than succeeded linearly. Using this method, Rudbeck simply divided the 9,000 years by 12, dating the Atlantean migrations and the reign of the Egyptian pharaoh Menes from Mannheim to around 1400 BC, precisely when the Gothicist sources claimed that the Scythians migrated from the Arctic island of Skansa. Rudbeck thus stands as an early revisionist, questioning the very foundations of history. Though still operating within the old Scandinavian framework, he opened the door for us later Tartarian researchers. Future work will compare Rudbeck's findings with Fomenko's new chronology to deepen the investigation further, which poses one intriguing question. Was the Swedish Empire under which Rudbeck lived not merely a rising European power, but rather the last breath of the ancient Atlantic Empire, more aptly called Svitjod the Great, as described in Ynglinga Saga? In the meantime, I'm seeking to understand Rudbeck's reasoning on its own terms, in tandem translating this possibly crucial work, first into modern Swedish, then into English, so that you can also take part in this rediscovering of this lost puzzle piece of our past. Thank you for listening.